Hello and welcome back to the Kop TV, the voice of football's most famous stand, for another top 5 video. This time it's top 5 worst signings in the Premier League era. Now I promise the next video we do will be a best of, because it seems to be quite negative at the moment, but that's not to say that we have not had some absolutely shocking transfer signings in the Premier League era. I mean, I've got a top 5 here, but the honourable mentions list is very, very long indeed. I mean, if we look at things like this, we haven't actually signed anyone really bad in about 5 years. So all of these names are kind of from the 2010 to, well, the 2003 to kind of 2015 era. So I would say in that 12-year period, we made some really shocking signings. So, number 5 on the list. Alberto Aquilani. Now, I was there when he made his debut for Liverpool. It was a League Cup game away at Arsenal. Insua scored. We lost 2-1. Insua scored a great goal that night, and that was his only goal for Liverpool. But Aquilani came on, and this was October. We signed him in June, so he didn't. I mean, he had to wait a long time to get his debut under his belt. But when he came on, I remember him hitting this 40-50 yard spray. And I said to my mate Matt next to me, I went, "We've just got our replacement for Xabi Alonso." Little did I know, he was awful. Shocking signing for Liverpool. I mean, there's one side of me that thinks Rafa got it wrong in terms of trying to bring him in as a Xabi Alonso replacement, because they're just different players. And then the other half of me thinks, well, actually, you know, he was really unlucky with injuries. If you look at his Wikipedia page, he's played for some great clubs. Roma, Juventus, AC Milan, Fiorentina. So his pedigree in Italy is definitely strong. I mean, he's 35 and retired now, but when he was playing, it was almost as if the Italian teams knew there was something there and they persisted with him. With Liverpool, 18 Premier League games and 1 goal. I think that was against Portsmouth. It just never really clicked for him at Liverpool. I hoped that he was going to be the replacement for Alonso. It never happened, and we sold him on in 2012 under Brendan Rodgers. After again a lot of injuries, a lot of loan spells, just didn't work out. I think the price tag, 20 million at the time, that's a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about 2009 here. We sold Xabi Alonso for 30 mil and we bought him for 20 mil. Not to really put emphasis on the price tag, of course that's not his fault, but to pay 20 million and only get 18 games and 1 goal, it's poor, and that's why he's number 5. Number 4 on the list is a signing that I didn't think was a big risk at the time, but then after I realised it was a stupid mistake. Number 4 is Mario Balotelli. Summer 2014, remember it very well. It was obviously after the incredible kind of spring we had in 13-14 when we thought we were going to win the league. Of course, Suarez leaves straight off to Barcelona. And we bring in Mario Balotelli. Ricky Lambert as well came in at the time. I mean, when we paid the 16 million for Balotelli, we'd all seen glimpses of what he could do at Man City, and I think he was at Euro 2012. He did a great job as well with Italy. So we saw what he could do. It was just about, has he got the right attitude? Is he going to work with Rodgers? Because I mean, that straight away didn't work. And the other question that we asked was, is he going to put the goals away? 16 million, 16 games and 1 Premier League goal. I remember that goal, and it was a last minute winner against Tottenham, which is probably the best memory Balotelli has in a Liverpool shirt. But the attitude, the lack of goals, I mean, it wasn't a very good season for Liverpool. I was saying to a mate yesterday, 14-15 was probably one of the worst seasons ever to be a Liverpool fan. And then obviously when Rodgers gets sacked in the start of the 15-16 season, Klopp comes in and still takes a while to get things going off the ground. But Mario Balotelli, big waste of money, to only get 1 goal from a £16 million transfer fee as a striker, simply not good enough. I remember him getting into a couple of scraps at West Ham away. I think he got in a scrap with Adrian, who's now signed by us and is also on the honourable mentions list. But for me, yeah, has to come in at number 4. Simply not good enough. but has gone on to have success in the French league. So yeah, all the best to Mario, but for us, just wasn't good enough. Number 3 in the list is Paul Konchesky. So at the time when we signed Paul Konchesky, Insua had just left, Aurelio had just left, so there was a void to fill at left back. He had decent pedigree, played for West Ham, played for Fulham, came from Charlton. He actually scored against us in the FA Cup final, if you remember, in 2006 with a complete fluke cross goal. So when he came in, you're thinking, well, you know, he's got decent pedigree in the Premier League. He should be all right to cover us. 15 games, 0 goals. He only cost 4 million at the time, which wasn't too much to pay for a left back. But again, I mean, he's lucky, to be honest, not to finish further up on this list. You'll see why he doesn't when you see the other two here. But Paul Konchesky, I mean, awful. Like I said, only lasted 15 games. This was a Roy Hodgson signing, so I mean that says it all really. Completely out of his depth when it came to bringing in transfers at Liverpool. That was his first mistake, I think, with Konchesky. That summer he also brought in Joe Cole, Christian Poulsen, Milan Jovanovic. I mean, to be honest with you, the fact that we even had Roy Hodgson as our manager sickens me. Still to this day, I can't believe he was our manager. It was never going to work, ever. So yeah, Paul Konchesky for me sums up that era of hugely unsuccessful play, and you know, that's on the pitch and off the pitch. We were in real financial trouble as well here during this time. So yeah, Paul Konchesky comes in at number 3. Number 2 in the list is El Hadji Diouf. So I'm going to take you back to the summer of 2002. We just finished second in the league. The World Cup had happened. Everything was great. It was a really good summer. Nicolas Anelka, if you remember, signed for us in the January of 2002. And we should have really signed him. The fact that we didn't sign him means that we signed this man, El Hadji Diouf. £10 million. I remember watching a Liverpool DVD around the time in 2002, and I remember Phil Thompson coming over and saying he's the best Senegal player ever. He'd had a decent World Cup, let's not forget, with Senegal. They'd beaten France along the way. I think they got to the quarterfinals that year. But El Hadji Diouf, I mean, we all thought it was going to be great. The first game he starts at Anfield, 3-0 win, scores 2 against Southampton at home. And you're thinking, right, proper number 9, he's bullish, he's a workhorse, he'll get stuck in, he scores a goal. But then it all fell apart. He resorted to spitting at fans. I remember away against Celtic in the UEFA Cup, he spat against the fan, and he's gone on actually to say some really horrible things about Liverpool, about Carragher, about Gerrard in his book. So absolutely no respect here for El Hadji Diouf. He's a real prick, to be honest with you. 55 league games he played for us, 3 goals in total. I mean, listen, if Gerrard and Carragher both sound you out as a prick, then you're probably a prick. And that's what they said quite early on. And all these years after, they've said pretty much similar things about his time at the club as well. So yeah, when he spat at that fan against Celtic, for me, that was it. Didn't want him associated with our club. Real nasty piece of work. I remember he came back to Anfield with Blackburn in 2008-9 and squared up to Gerrard. I mean, the cheek. He even said something like Gerrard wasn't as good as people think he is. Absolute prick. Fuck El Hadji Diouf, yeah? Fuck El Hadji Diouf. That's why you're number 2 on the worst 5 ever signings in the Premier League era for Liverpool. Now, number 1 on this list. Now, it's very difficult here to do a list without mentioning this bloke. Andy Carroll. He's number 1 on the list. 35 million from Newcastle. We all know what happened on that crazy transfer deadline day. Torres goes to Chelsea. Carroll comes in on a helicopter from Newcastle, apparently in tears because he didn't want to leave. And Luis Suarez comes in as well. Now, we all know what happened with Luis Suarez. Goes on to be a club legend, one of the best players in the Premier League ever. Goes on to win the Champions League with Barcelona, etc., etc. Didn't win it last year though. However, with Andy Carroll, I mean, there's a story. He openly came out and said that during his travel to Liverpool from Newcastle on that day, he was crying in the helicopter. He didn't want to come. I mean, Kenny Dalglish was manager at the time. If I was Kenny Dalglish and I knew that Andy Carroll had been crying in the helicopter about not wanting to come to Liverpool, he's going straight back to Newcastle and we cancel the contract. From that moment, he had no interest in playing for Liverpool. Newcastle was his boyhood club. Didn't want to leave. He was forced to leave because, you know, we paid 35 million. No one's going to reject that, especially if you're Newcastle and Mike Ashley at the time. I mean, we buy him in January. Doesn't make his debut until March. He signed on with a 2-month injury layoff. Finally scored a header and a great long ranger against Man City. That really kind of, well, what we thought put him on the map as a Liverpool striker. But then after that, I don't think he scored in the league, which was just not good enough, to be honest. I mean, Suarez hit the ground running, but Andy Carroll, I'm sure he put the effort in because he did seem to run around a lot. But at the end of the day, a number 9 for Liverpool. I mean, he goes in the same bracket here as El Hadji Diouf in terms of shocking number 9s that we've signed at Liverpool. 35 million, 44 Premier League games, and only 6 goals for Liverpool. Most notably, like I said, 2 against City, but he scored 1 away at Everton. Remember, he scored a winner later on at Blackburn. I mean, yeah, just not good enough, really. He was loaned out in the summer of 2012. Didn't really stick around too long. I remember Rodgers, when he came in, sent him away to West Ham, and since then, I mean, I was looking at his Wikipedia page earlier. He's only scored 75 goals in his career. And as someone who was once the most expensive British player of all time, you'd really hope that he'd score more than that, and he hasn't. And you'd have to be honest and say Andy Carroll has not lived up to his potential. 7 games for England, 2 goals, just not. I mean, he's probably 30 now, which for me makes me feel old, first of all. But yeah, just a player that was targeted by injuries, was targeted by people slamming the 35 million price tag on him, which again isn't his fault, of course it's not. But you have to live up to that price tag, and he didn't. Simply not good enough. And purely for the price tag alone, even though it's not his fault, he's number 1 in this list. Now, like I said earlier in this video, from 2003 to 2012, there was a litter of poor signings, intertwined with some excellent signings. You look at Xabi Alonso, Luis Garcia, Torres, Mascherano, Pepe Reina, Arbeloa. These are all good players that signed during this time, so we can't write it all off and say every player we signed was shit. But the following players were shit. Loris Karius, the less said about that man, the better. Every time I talk about him, it infuriates me. Another man that also infuriates me and has made big mistakes for us in European and domestic finals, Alberto Moreno. How that man managed to stay at Liverpool for more than 4 years is a myth. It's a fable. It's awful, to be honest with you. He should never have played for Liverpool. Simply not good enough. I don't care what anyone says. Didn't like him. Fucking hated him, to be honest. Christian Benteke. Now again, signed him for 32 million. This was a Brendan Rodgers signing, not a Klopp signing. Simply not good enough. I think he scored 10 goals in all comps during the season, but everyone remembers the sitters that he missed, to be honest. And how many did he miss? It was a lot, let me tell you that. So unfortunately, Christian Benteke is also on this list. Bruno Cheyrou, the next Zidane. I think we bought him in 2002. I remember him scoring a lovely goal against Chelsea to beat them, actually 1-0 away at Stamford Bridge. That was his best moment for us. I think he scored a couple against Newcastle in the FA Cup at home for us in the 03-04 season. Yeah, apart from that though, really didn't live up to it. Was never the next Zidane. The next on the list, Christian Poulsen. I mentioned him earlier in the list. A Roy Hodgson signing, an era that I just really want to delete from the history of Liverpool Football Club. Awful player, number 28 he was. Absolutely shocking. Weak, not authoritative, couldn't pass the ball, slow. I've seen milk turn quicker than him. Honestly, shocking. Never, ever, ever fit enough to play for Liverpool. Next on the list, Charlie Adam. I mean, he scored 12 league goals for Blackpool in the season before we signed him. I think when Fergie knew that Liverpool were interested, he said something like each one of Charlie Adams' corners was 10 million. So what did we go and do? We spent 20 million on him. Well, it wasn't 20 million, it was around 13 million, I think. But Fergie, fair play to him there. As soon as he knew Liverpool were interested, he shoots the price up from Charlie Adam. And listen, a decent sprayer of the ball. We've seen some of the goals he scored for Stoke from the halfway line. A good sprayer, but let's not hide from the fact that he was fat, he was overweight, he loved to drink, and yeah, simply not good enough to hold down a position. I mean, listen, he played in that era that I want to delete. So what can you say about that? He needs to get deleted too. Another signing from the Hodgson era, Joe Cole. I mean, listen, everyone knew about Joe Cole, and I was excited just like anyone else was when he signed for Liverpool. I always remember him just having his arms on his hips and panting like he was always out of breath. Didn't play well for Liverpool, got sent off in his Premier League debut against Arsenal. Yeah, for me, a flop. Robbie Keane, a player that I really was desperate to see succeed at Liverpool. Big Celtic and Liverpool fan when he was growing up. Lives local to me, actually. My parents have seen him kind of around the way. And he was another one who was signed maybe a bit too prematurely. I think we rushed in that January to get him. When did we sign him? Sorry, we signed him. Yeah, so Robbie Keane, a player that I really wanted to succeed at Liverpool, just didn't happen for him. We bought him in the August of 2008 to play up front with Torres. I think it took him till November to score his first goal in the Champions League against PSV, and then scored in the league against, I think it was West Brom, scored a couple. So at that point you're thinking, well, the duck's been broken. He scored against Atletico Madrid away in the Champions League, and you are starting to think, right, we might have a player here. But then suddenly January he gets sold back to Tottenham for around 15 mil. I think we made a 5 mil loss on him. Listen, a player that I really wanted to succeed, but just didn't happen. Next on the list, Sean Dundee. The less said about that prick, the better. Next on the list is Sean Dundee, the South African striker who signed for us in the year 2000, made 5 appearances, shirt number 16, never played for us again, waste. Abel Xavier, I mean, why are we buying a defender from Everton? That's madness. Ricky Lambert, I mean, probably got the dream move in his career a little too late. 32 when he signed for Liverpool, only scored 3 goals, 2 away from home, didn't actually score at Anfield, ever. I remember he scored 1 away against Ludogorets, 1 away at West Ham, and 1 away at Palace, or Palace and Villa I think it was. Again, just didn't work. Another Brendan Rodgers signing, didn't work. Milan Jovanovic, again, part of that era that I want to delete from my memory and from history. Shocking player. I mean, a lot of caps for Serbia, so he's a good international player, but never fit enough to wear the Liverpool shirt, ever. I mean, how he took Xabi Alonso's number 14 is it just adds insult to injury. Fabio Borini, again, a player that I wanted to succeed. You could tell he liked the club, you could tell he was keen to succeed. Again, another Rodgers signing that was probably just, again, not the level of Liverpool. So yeah, I mean, I think he only scored about 2 or 3 goals. Again, that 14-15 season, we had Balotelli, Borini and Ricky Lambert up front. Simply not good enough. Horrible season. Lazar Markovic, again, another Brendan Rodgers signing. I think he was 20 mil. I think he might have played 10 league games for us. Again, he was used as a wing-back in that 14-15 season. And I remember him scoring away at Sunderland, and we won 1-0. That was his best moment. But yeah, less said about him, the better. He was a number 50. And yeah, I think he's only just left us, and we signed him in 2014. So, shocking. Iago Aspas. We all know about that corner at home to Chelsea, the Gerrard slip game, enough said. Prick. However, shocking for Liverpool, don't get me wrong. Awful. Absolutely rancid for Liverpool. But he has been the top highest Spanish scorer in La Liga for the last 3 years. So, yeah. Finally on the list, Luis Alberto. again, not a great player for us, but has gone on to play really well for who's he at? Lazio. So again, a lot of these players, once they leave Liverpool, do go on to have good careers, and I can't hold anything against them for that. But all I can say is, every single one of these players that I've mentioned today at Liverpool was awful. And that rounds up your top 5 worst Liverpool Premier League signings of all time. Like I said, in the next video, we'll probably do a best of in the top 5, just to raise the spirits. But listen, hopefully we're back watching football in the next few weeks. Yeah, I'll see you then. Take care, all the best. Stay safe.